Perfect. So this session is a 2-hour session on developing user interfaces with ReactJS. And this is first part of the 3 sessions. So the agenda is we'll start with introduction, of course. Then we look at the setup required for the ReactJS. Then we look at how do we bootstrap the project. Then we understand the structure of the project. We try to understand what is a component, nested components, list components, and properties. This is the agenda for the day 1 session. Yeah, this is a normal, what do you call, customary slide. Maybe we can skip it for now. So let's straight away get into introduction. So ReactJS is a UI library for web interfaces. Remember, this is a library for developing user interfaces. Those user interfaces are primarily meant for web applications, web interfaces. That's where ReactJS is useful. Originally developed at Facebook in the mid-2000s. Later it was released for the developers community. Since then, many people started using it. Apart from ReactJS, you have Vue as well as Angular also. They all come under similar category. ReactJS follows what we call as a component architecture. In a sense, when we say a component, it is something that is self-sufficient unit of user interface. Instead of building the entire web page as one single unit, we build that web page as a combination of multiple individual or independent units so that they can be rearranged, reused in other applications. Still, they can communicate with each other as long as they are in the same application. That is what we call as componentization. Right? We have individual UI components in a web application user interface, which can communicate with each other to give the holistic behavior for the application. Components are very good for usability. If I create, let's say, a calendar component, I can use that calendar not just only in application 1. You can also use it in application 2, application 3, any number of applications. You can even sell those the components for price, or you can donate it to open source community. It's basically they are a lot reusable. That's where we use ReactJS. Otherwise, you can simply use normal JavaScript, or there are quite a few other things like let's say jQuery, Dojo. These are a little outdated now ever since we got the component libraries into picture because of this specific reusability. This is based on JavaScript version ECMA 2015, which is also popularly known as ES6. People, even though just call everything as JavaScript, it is vastly different between or before ECMA 2015 and after ECMA 2015. ReactJS is built on ECMA 2015. Means in order to work with ReactJS, you need to have a fair idea of writing JavaScript code using this version, that is ECMA 2015. In short, we just call it as ES6. We use the Visual Studio Code, that is VS Code. That is the most popular IDE when it comes to ReactJS application. I'm not saying that you must use the same thing, but it is one of the most popular integrated development environments. And to develop any ReactJS application, you require some environment, right? Some runtime. And that runtime is provided by Node.js. Since ReactJS is essentially a JavaScript library, Node.js is obviously the runtime for running the JavaScript on the server side. In this case, what happens is like during the development, we use Node.js to develop the ReactJS applications. Once we develop, we build it and we create a distributable image That image is simply just a normal file which you can run on any browser. So that means React.js applications run in browsers, but they are developed on Node.js environment. Node.js offers a package manager called npm, so it helps us in picking up the packages like React.js packages, a lot of other third-party packages required for the React.js applications. So npm is part of Node.js, so we are at ease. And Node.js also offers several other tools for building and obfuscating the code and etc. And scaffolding is also possible in the sense you can create the project, you can bootstrap a project, and then you can start developing and customizing your application. All right, so this is basic introduction to React.js. You people need not to keep quiet. Anytime if you have a question, you just stop me, ask the question, I'll try to answer it. If the answer is going to be answered, if the question is to be answered at a later point of time, I'll let you know anyway. But if you have questions, don't hesitate to stop me and ask me questions during the session. So I'm going to the next slide. So this is the environment setup that we need to have for developing the React.js applications. First one is, of course, as I mentioned, Visual Studio Code. I'm sure you are all aware like from where you need to get it and how to install it. In case if it is new to you, this is the location. Go there and you have different what do you call images available for your particular platform. Depending on the platform, you choose the image of VS Code and follow the instructions and install it. Apart from that, you require Node.js, so you can download it from that given link. The latest version is long time support version is the 20x. So that is what I'm also using here. And once you install Node.js, maybe on the command prompt, just type in that command. Dollar is that typically we use as the prompt on the Linux and Mac machines, right? So ignore that. You just type node-v with a space in between. Then if it prints the Node version, it means this is Node is working perfectly fine. So let me just do that work on my machine once. Hopefully the screen is visible to you. This screen is also right. So I am saying node-v. So you can see that I am using the version 25.1. That is the node I am currently using. So once the node is set up, then you can create a template project for React.js applications. A template project can be created using the tool called Create React App. You can see it here, right? Create React App. For which this tool need to be run using npx command. That is, it is npm plus execution. Npm only downloads the packages. Npx downloads the required packages and also executes it. So this command downloads create React app tool and executes it. As part of that execution, whatever you provide here, it picks up as the name of the project. It creates a folder with that name and downloads all the things that are required. So you'll be seeing something like this when you are running this command. So let me try doing that. Since I already have such a project, let me do something else. Let me be there. Yeah, let me create at something like npx create React app. Maybe let me say temp. Then what happens? It would create a project by name temp in the folder called temp. So it takes little time because it need to download lots of packages that are required. That is like React.js packages, the packages that React.js depends on internally and their internal dependencies. So it creates a hell of a lot of packages, about a few hundreds, if not thousands of packages. So it may take a couple of minutes as it is indicating. Finally, once it is done, you will see this kind of a message saying like this one as well as the next screen. Finally, you will be seeing the message stating that success, it created so and so project and so and so path. So see here also you can see success. It created the temp project and so on so folder. You can see here that temp folder is created. Right? You can see that temp folder is created. So it also gives you some indications like how to start running that server and blah, blah, blah. So all you need to do is like npm, go to that project, right? We need to first, you can see here, right? You need to first go to that folder and then start running the development server.
Krishna, I think screen is not visible.
It is showing only terminal screen, Krishna, from a few minutes back.
Oh, is it? It's not, currently it is not showing the slide, is it?
No, no.
Okay, one
Only
second.
terminal it will show.
1 second. How about now?
Yeah, it's showing.
Okay, okay. Then let me do one thing. I think if it is in full screen, it's going in a different direction, right? Now you can see terminal screen. Can you see
Yes,
the
Krishna.
terminal screen?
Yeah.
Now, can you see the slide also?
Yes.
Okay, okay, fair enough. All right, so currently I am in the which project, outside of the newly created temp project. So let me go to the temp now, and then I can see it created a good number of what do you call folders and files. All right, so that those things we'll go through those folders and files little later. But let us start running this application also. All we need to do is like as we have seen earlier, you just see npm start from within the folder. From within the folder. In this case, I moved into the project that is Koyya timesheet UI, and I did npm start. In our case, I am saying npm start from within the temp project. You can see I am within temp here, and I am running this command from this place. Then it would start the development server and automatically opens that dummy application on the browser. So if you are able to get to this point, it means you created the dummy project and you are able to run the dummy project. After this, the next step is essentially we need to just go and customize this application according to our requirements, right? According to our requirements. Are you able to see the output screen on the browser now? Is that screen visible?
Yes, Krishna.
Okay, okay, very good. So that's it. This is the initial bootstrapping. So this is the screen that we are seeing, right? This is the screen that will be running anyway we have seen for ourselves. So let's do a quick recall. So this is a question. Try to answer any of you or all of you. Try to answer this question. Which of the following best describes ReactJS? There may be more than one right answer here. See which one, which is or which are the right options here. Someone answer? I need answers, otherwise I will not go to the next slide. Are you able to see the screen, first of all, the question?
Yes, Krishna.
Yeah, tell me, is it, can I say the JavaScript is, ReactJS is a JavaScript library based on ECMA 2015. Do you agree?
Yes, Krishna.
Okay. It is a library to build UI
Build UI
components
components.
for user interfaces on web. Correct statement. Create React app is useful in creating template project for ReactJS. Do you agree?
Yes, Krishna.
Right. It requires a Node.js server to run in production. Do you agree? Little doubtful, right? That is wrong option. Node.js is required only during the development. It runs a development server. In production, you don't require Node.js. You can use any other web server. All you require is your web application into which you'll be deploying your ReactJS code files. That's it. You don't require Node.js in production. It is required only during development. So all those three options that are in bold are the right options. The D option is wrong option. Okay, encourage me by giving answers. Otherwise, it is like I am speaking to my screen only, it looks like. Right. So next question. The command npm start under a create React app project, then we need to fill that statement. We have run create React app, then it generated a project, and then we have run npm start. That also we did. Now look at which of these things are the right answers. One or more. Yeah. Can someone
Option
answer?
C.
Option
Option
C. Okay. Let me read all of them once. Starts a production ready web server and deploys the application. Wrong. Starts Node.js platform. No, it is already started. That's why we are able to run npm start command. Starts a development web server and deploys the application. Of course, yes. Builds the ReactJS application for distribution. That is wrong. So the right option is C. Very good. Very good. Appreciated. Now, having seen a bit of what is ReactJS, how we create the simple project, now let's move on to the next level. Let us try to understand the project structure. Let's try to understand the project structure. So if I go back to this place, let me stop this. And if I say ls minus l, you can see that there are several folders like readme md, of course, node underscore modules, package log JSON, package JSON, public, and src. Out of which you can see here, node modules is a folder, package, public is a folder, and src is also a folder. So if you go into those folders, you will be seeing these files. Under node underscore modules, you will see several folders and files. Essentially, those are all the package dependencies that our application require. And their internal dependencies also. They may run into hundreds of such folders. README markdown file, you all know, it is to write any documentation. Public folder would contain all the public assets of your web application. In our case, that is sample application that it created, right? So it is having the HTML file, that is minimal thing we require. Any assets like images and other things. Manifest is for caching purpose. Those things are not really, you need not understand at this point for ReactJS, that is basic things. All right, so out of the public thing, the whatever I have highlighted here is the only file that is very much related to what we are trying to do here. Everything else may be there, may not be there, need not be there also for a ReactJS application. This git ignore file is also an interesting thing. We will be looking into it. Package JSON is one of the very, very important files. In fact, package JSON is a file that we must have, right? That we must have when we develop anything on Node.js. Every Node.js project would have package.json. This is essentially a project manifest file. Just like Maven or Gradle for the Java projects, or requirements.txt for the Python projects, and there are several such kind of stuff, right? So for Node.js projects, package.json is the project manifest file. We'll look into that also. And then under src, we have a CSS file, a couple of JS files. These are the three things that we'll be looking at little more closer in the next few slides. So the first one, let us start with the package.json file that we have seen under that, right? So we can see here also, right? If I see package.json, right? So this is the content. So from here, this is the content. So the same thing that is created even for the timesheet application also. So you'll be having the name of the project, version of the project, whether this package is a private package or public package, what are the dependencies, what are these runtime scripts, and few other things which I ignored for this session. Out of which these dependencies are very much interesting. You see here a couple of things I have highlighted. One is React, another one is React-DOM. React is of version 18.3, React DOM is of also version 18.3.1. The symbol that you are seeing here, right, that upward arrow, we call it as caret. That caret symbol specifies that this application requires a React library of version 18.3.1 or later, 18.3.2, 18.3.3, 19.20, that is all fine. But 18.3.0 is not supported in this application. Same thing here, right? If you do not have a caret, it exactly tells it which version it requires, nothing less, nothing more. Means React scripts, it requires just only 501, nothing else, right? Only 501. Whereas Web Vitals, anything either 214 or beyond 214, right? So we have run that npm start command, right? Basically, this is that start. This command actually runs this script. This is the script that it runs. What is that script? React scripts. From where it is coming? From here it is coming. This is the version. Once the package JSON is given to the node project, internally it runs npm install command, or you can run npm install command anytime, any from your project. It reads the dependencies from this file and downloads all of them onto your local machine, that is your local repository, that is node underscore modules. Just like Maven, how it downloads all the dependencies and their interdependencies into the Maven repositories, this particular file is read by npm install command and downloads all these libraries for us. Okay, so let's see. Let us go to the timesheets project that I have currently on my machine. You can see that node modules is containing these many number of folders. You can see it is running in terms of hundreds. There are a few hundreds of them. One of them would be definitely our React thing, because we mentioned that as a right. So this is React. So this React, if we look at package JSON, you can see that it is of version 18.3.1. That's what exactly we was asked for. But this guy itself is having some dependencies, something like this. So it will download that one also, and that loose env file will have its own dependencies. So that way we get into these many number of dependencies. All right, so that is the folder node modules. Remember, this node module folder is a very bulky folder. We must not share it with anybody because it serves no purpose. You just share package JSON, let them run npm install so that they will be able to download the libraries onto their machine. Instead, if you are distributing the application along with the node modules folder, it will be running into few MBs, if not more. If it is only package JSON and your source code, it would be just few KBs. Very important. Okay. So as far as timesheet application, yeah, we are seeing it here, right? So these are the dependencies. In one word, package JSON is a manifest file, project manifest file. What is there in git ignore? We have git ignore even here also, right? This is the git ignore file. There are several things in it. Basically, it tells that which are all the folders of this particular project should be ignored when you are pushing the code into the Git repositories. Basically, ignore these folders, right? Ignore these folders. Do not push them into Git. We are telling it to the Git tool. When we say Git push, it will read this file and identifies that, oh, I should not push anything under the node modules. I should not push anything under build. I should not push anything under coverage. If you want to add any other folders, you can add. If you want to remove, you need to edit this file, right? Git ignore file, this is the default file with the default structure. I do not make any changes. Even for the package JSON also, I did not make any changes. It is just initially we need not to make any changes, of course. Then we said there is a public folder under which we have index.html, right? So this is that file. In this file, this is basic HTML only. You have HTML, head tags, link tags, title tags, blah, blah, blah. All these tags you have. Out of all these things, the only thing that we are really interested in is this div tag. Right? If you know a bit of HTML, you are aware of what is a div. Div is essentially just a region. It is a division on the screen. Invisible division. By using CSS, if you make it red in background, then the division appears in red color. Otherwise, it is just an invisible division. That division is having a unique identity called root. So there is a division whose ID is root. And if you look at what is there within this division between the opening and the closing tags, there is nothing. That means this is an empty division. We did not have anything in this division at this point. But this division is important. It doesn't mean that the ID must be root or it must be division. No. We need to have some region in your UI so that you can inject your ReactJS components. Those regions can be divs or spans, it can be anything. The best one is, of course, division. That is the best thing for any kind of layout on HTML. So we use division. It should have some ID so that I can select that ID or select that division using that ID at a later point of time. It can be root, it can be XYZ also. By default, it is given it as root. I do not see any reason for changing it, so I just left it as root. This is index.html. Next comes index.js, that is under SRC folder. So if I go to, from public, if I go to SRC, there is a file called index.js. This is the file. All right. So when you generate the code, the initial index.js file looks like this. Initial index file looks like this. Quite a few things, right? Maybe for the first timer, it looks little crazy. Let me explain a few things. This import statement for Java folks, it is very much familiar. Even for Python folks also, right? It is for C, C++, it is like include statement. We are essentially importing a third-party library, third-party object called React from a third-party library called React. So there is a library called React or a package called React in which there is something called React. That is what we are importing. From where is this React? By default, it looks into, Node.js looks into the node_modules folder, because I'm not giving any other path. I'm just giving React. Then it automatically assumes that the React as a library is available under node_modules. We have just seen a while ago that it is present there. So that means it is able to figure it out. From there, it will be getting a module called React. It would get a module called React, which is required for us. Similarly, from another library called React DOM under node_modules, there is another folder called client in which there is another object called React DOM. It is also getting it. When it comes to third thing, it is giving a relative path from the current folder, right? Dot means current folder, called index.css, import it. This is just a CSS file from the current folder. You can see that there is that index CSS in the same location where we have index.js, right? So import that CSS file. Then it says import app from, in the current folder, there is something called app. Here there is a small catch. This app can be a file or can be a folder. It can be any of them, but it must be in the same folder where we have this index.js file. So in this same folder, we have something called app.js. So essentially, it is from that app.js, it is importing something called app. Something called app. Let me repeat again. From React library in the node_modules, it is loading, importing React module. From client under React -DOM under node modules, it is importing React DOM. From the current folder, it is importing index.css, a style sheet. From the current folder, from a file called app.js, I'm not giving .js, remember. If I just give app, it either looks into app.js, or if there is a folder called app, it goes to that folder automatically. From there, it is loading something called app. If this name and this name need not be same, it happens to be similar here in this case. There is something else called report web vitals, which is not really required for every application, but it is good to have. So we are loading it. We do not stress much upon this at this point. So once all these things are available, once all of them are loaded, right? Once all of them are loaded, the next step is we have that React DOM here, right? Use that object and call the function called create route. Basically, for our current React.js project, there should be a route from in which we'll be writing everything else, the seed element. Where we are creating that root element, we are saying that go to that HTML document. There is an element whose ID is root. If you see, that was this guy. That means we are essentially saying this line is essentially saying that go to that document. There is some element with the name root. Element can be anything. It need not be div only. But its ID is root, must be root, because that's what we are specifying here. If you may name it as ID as XYZ over there, here also you write XYZ. So you figure out that element called root, whose ID is root, and convert that into the root element for the entire React.js component. For the entire React.js component, that means whatever component we are going to build now will be injected into that space, into that particular location. In our case, that particular div element. What is that we want to put there in that component? What is that we want to put there? So we are saying here under the root, please render the app. What is this app coming from here? This app, this code looks normal JavaScript code so far, but here if you see, this looks JavaScript, but this looks some HTML because all those tags, markups and other things. That's why we do not call, even though extension is JS, this is actually extended JS. We call this as JSX. This format is called as JSX. JSX says that you can interwoven the tags and the JavaScript. It will identify them and it will resolve them into the actual code later. So in this case, we are rendering, and what we are saying here, we are rendering some markup. HTML is markup, right? I'm rendering some markup here. And the most important thing here is app. For the time being, ignore this line. What is that strict mode and other things? For the time being, ignore. All we need to do is like create a root element and render some component into that root element. The component we are rendering here is app. Rendering means we are displaying it. We are displaying, showing in a given place. That's what we call rendering, right? In user interfaces, we call this word render. In that specific location. Observe carefully, the component is written as a tag, self-closing tag. It need not be self-closing tag, of course, but because there is nothing else is in this currently in this app, it is just self-closing. Observe carefully, this is an uppercase letter. This is also in uppercase letter. Whereas here, everything is in lowercase letters. That's a basic difference we need to identify. The HTML tags must always be lowercase. Whereas the tags that we will be using for React.js, basically the tags that represent React.js components must start with uppercase, capital R, capital S, capital A. That is how the runtime environment, the React.js compiler understands all these things. If it is not in the uppercase, if it is lowercase, it will assume that it is just a normal HTML, it just prints as it is. If it is uppercase, then it assumes that it is a component and searches for that component. This is app component. Where is that app component? In this location. So it sets that location and it goes there. And that is where we have defined the entire component called app. So what am I doing here? In this, again, I'm having some CSS for my app. So the same syntax that we have used earlier. See here, what I'm writing? I'm writing a function called app. This is the nice thing about React.js. It is function-oriented application. Everything is function. You need not to create classes and blah, blah, blah. Everything is just a function. You create a function with a given name, which starts with an uppercase letter, and return some markup. It becomes a React.js component. That's simple. Let me repeat again. You create some function, name it. Name must start with uppercase letter. And in that function, what you need to do, you need to return. What do you return? An element, which may contain any number of other elements. Which may contain any number of other elements. Then it becomes a component. Because it is created in a separate file called app.js, it becomes a separate module. For someone else to import this module, you need to export it. So I'm exporting whatever app I'm creating, I'm exporting that app in this line. Any kind of a component you see, this is the same template. Create a function, give a name, return some element. That element may contain any number of child elements, and finally you export that function so that someone can import. When they are importing, what is that they are importing? APP. What is APP? This function. So in ReactJS, this is how you create UI components. And what is this component here? This is containing a div, and which contains some header, which contains some image, some p tag, some a tag. You see, these are all normal HTML tags only. These are all normal HTML tags. In these tags only, we created those logos, and we put those messages and etc. Learn React and additional other things, because of which we are able to see this screen. This screen is outcome of this code in the app. This code in the app. Observe the highlighted things. I am using some CSS. I need to explain it a little more. I am creating a function. I am returning one element which may contain any number of sub-elements or child elements. And finally, I am exporting that component. As long as I do it, I create a component. And this is the component. That means this entire markup is what we want to. It's what we mean by render. And that this entire thing will be pushed into this place, means here. So that's how it appears on the HTML file. Right? So a bit about CSS. For this application, for this component, we may want to have some special style sheet. So you can create your own CSS for that. Its name can be anything, but a good practice is like if your component is ABC, you name the CSS also ABC. So you will know that which CSS is meant for which component. I told you already, components are self-sufficient. They will have their own CSS, they will have their own functionality, they will have their own markup. And they will be interacting with server on the other side using Ajax, or interacting with other components on the same page. But they are self-sufficient. So for this component, we have some style sheet that is required by it. In that style sheet, there may be a class. In normal HTML, you just write class, whereas here in ReactJS, you need to use the attribute called class name. Observe carefully, N is in caps. So what is that apps CSS? This is that file. And in this, I have a class called app. It tells that everything should be in the center. The logo should be of this color. And there should be an animation with a spin, blah, 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 blah. Because of all these things, we are seeing here you are seeing this particular animation. Right, so I haven't written any new code. This is the code that is automatically downloaded or created for us as part of the dummy project. Next step is to actually go and develop our own application. We need to develop our own application. But before that, let us again recall what we have done so far. Right, answer this question. Can someone answer this question? Even if it is wrong, not a problem. If it is wrong, then I'll know that I need to explain it a little more. If you are keeping quiet, I'm not sure whether you are listening to me or you are seeing the screen or not. I'll not have any clue. Priyanka, are you there? Priyanka? Not able to hear you. Sumant?
Yes, Krishna.
Right. So what do you think? Which of these four options is right or wrong? I think those options are in wrong order. Pardon for that.
I think it's A and C.
A and C.
Yeah.
Let me read. Which of the following are true? The node modules folder is a local repository for all the packages used by the current application. I hope you all agree with that. A is right answer. The node modules folder must be included in the final distribution, must not be actually. Right? Node modules are required only during the development. Finally, you'll be creating a distribution image which contains the required stuff only. Node modules need not be included in the final distribution. So D is not the correct option. The node modules folder should not be pushed into the Git repository, which is right. We must not push this into the Git repository. Git repository is meant for code that we have written so that we can version control it. Whereas node modules contains the code that is written by someone else. There is nothing required. We don't do anything with that code. We just only use it. So we must not push it into the Git repository. Also citing the reason that it is too heavy. Your repositories will be quickly filled with a lot of unnecessary this kind of libraries. So B is also right answer. And the node modules folder is populated by npm install command. That is also right answer. All right. So when we say npm install, it creates and populates. If it is not already created, it creates it. If it is already there, it just populates that specific folder by downloading the required packages by reading the package JSON file. So A, B, C are the right answers. I don't know why this order is mixed up here. Sorry for that. Next question. What is true about package.json? Someone please answer this. Maybe I expect Vinesh to answer this at least this time.
I'm thinking A and B, Krishna.
A and B. Okay. Yeah, let's see. Kumar, what do you think?
Same question.
A and B. A and B, is it?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Priyanka, are you back? Is she there or not? I'm not sure. Okay, let me move on. What is true about package JSON? Option A says it is a project manifest that declares dependencies among other things, which is right. We have seen those dependencies listed. npm install command installs the packages that are declared in it. Right? The npm install command installs the packages that are declared in this package JSON. That is also right. Package lock.json is a resolved is the resolved version of this file. Of course, yes. Package JSON only lists out top level libraries. Package JSON will have the resolved libraries like libraries, top level libraries, their dependencies, the full list of all the dependencies, internal dependencies are all listed over here in the package lock.json. We don't write it, it is automatically created. For example, in our case, this is package JSON. All together, we kept some 6 libraries, 6, 7. But if you look at package lock, you can see that it is having the list of all the libraries and their internal libraries, their internal dependencies. You can still see that I just covered only maybe some 10% of this. It is already 2000 lines. This is a log file. In the sense, you should not edit this because it is a resolved file. So npm install command just go through this log file instead of resolving it every time we run the command. Every node project is expected to have this file in the project root, which is also correct answer. You develop any node project, you must have package JSON. Just like for any Maven project, you'll have POM XML, same thing here. And this file must be pushed into the Git. Of course, yes. If this is not pushed into the Git, whoever gets your source code will not have any understanding of what are the libraries you require to run that particular code or to compile that specific code. So this file must be pushed into the Git repository. That means all the 5 options are correct options. All the 5 options are correct options, not just a couple of them. Okay. Do you want to take a break or shall I continue? Answer please. You want to have a 10-minute break or you want me to continue? Continue.
Continue,
Okay.
Krishna.
Very good. Very good. Perfect then. So let's get into developing our own application. So we are developing an application called timesheet. This is basically to record the working, the efforts of a particular employee on a given day in a given organization. So for which I'm updating the code of app. We have seen the app already, which was returning a div element and exporting that particular app. But what was written within the div, I have changed it. I have written according to my requirement. My requirement is to have a screen in which an employee should be able to specify the login time, logout time, how much effort they spent on different activities. So that is what I want to have. So I want to create that as a React component. So for that, I have a heading called timesheet. Then I have a horizontal ruler, which is essentially what do you call a line, separating line. Then I'm saying, hi Krishna. This is a static application, right? Dynamically, this Krishna, that name will have to be changed according to the logged in username. But for now, it is static thing. So hi Krishna. After that, I'm having a line break. Then I'm having text saying, fill in your timesheet by following these guidelines. And then I have an ordered list. If you know HTML, these are nothing new. All right. And then I have several list elements. There I have given some guidelines. Login time must be between 8 a.m. and 11 a.m. Logout time must be between 4 p.m. and 7 p.m. The time difference between login and logout must be 8 hours. Total time spent on day activities must not be less than 6 hours. So out of 8 hours, maybe you go for lunch break, you take some tea breaks and here and there. So minimum 8 hours of work you need to, or effort you need to put in on any given day. And then I am having a horizontal ruler. Then I'm saying on, this is an input of type date, a date input, on so-and-so date, logged in at, I'm having an input time element with 10 as the default value, logged out at another time element with 6 as the default value, from a radio button, selected radio button saying home, and another selected radio button saying office. I'll show you the outcome of the screen, but this is HTML. There is no ReactJS here, right? ReactJS is only till this point. What I'm writing here is all pure HTML, right? So after this, there is something more here, and there is something more I'll have to write, and that is what I have written over here. This is the place. This is the thing. I'm having spent something like spent these many number of hours, that is 0 to 24 maximum. By default, it is 1. So spent 1 hour, let's say, and this is 0 to 50 in steps of 10, by default 10, 0. Number of minutes. Basically, we spent these many hours and these many minutes on some activity. What is that activity? One option is coding, another option is review meeting. There may be any number of such things. In this sample timesheet static application, I just have coding and review meeting. So a person will specify that I spent these many hours and these many minutes on coding, or these many hours and minutes on review meeting. And finally, it will compute that entire thing saying that you put these many hours, X number of hours, and Y number of minutes of effort in total. That effort must not be less than 6. That's what the legend was saying. And finally, you have a button to click so that this particular input gets recorded. This particular input gets recorded. This is my component. And the outcome of running that component looks like this. If I change my app code according to this, let me change it now itself. Instead of this, let me just open normal text editor. And let me open that folder just we created, right? Open that on the desktop. We have the temp. So I'm opening it. So here under src, we have app.js, right? So instead of this code, I'll be writing this piece of code. So first part is this. Okay. And then the next part is this piece. Let me see if I can format it. This is normal editor, so I cannot simply just go and format. I need to configure a few things. But for the time being, let me not worry about all of them. So I just pasted that code. Just see that. And I am saving this. I just saved this file. All I did is like I changed the code and saved the file. And currently I'm not running this application, right? I just closed it. So let me rerun the application. How do I run it? npm start. Right? You can see that these are all happening. Other thing I need to make, there are few other changes I need to make to get it correctly. That is in the app CSS, instead of center, let me say left. Let me say left. And also, yeah, this is one thing. And a small thing in the index.js. If you know HTML, CSS, what I'm doing is very normal things. There is some index CSS, right? Let me put a margin of 10 so that it looks a little more interesting. Yeah, you can see it, right? I did not rerun anything. As long as I'm changing the code, my create React app application, that whatever got created, Node.js is keep looking at the files that I'm changing. And according to that, it is automatically rerunning the application and giving the immediate results over here. So you can see what I have done just now. This is the heading. This is the salutation. This is that UL LI elements. And on, I'll say like, let us say if it is yesterday's work, logged in at 10 a.m. And logged out at 6 p.m. from, let's say I work from office, not home. But this is not a dynamic application. Nothing happens when I make these changes. So how to make these two things work correctly, I need to write some, what do you call, some other executable code. Still, I'm not writing it. And I spent how much time? Let's say I spent, currently these are all not editable also, because I did not have anything really, what do you call, written for that particular purpose. So let's say I'm doing some coding, reviewing, and blah, blah, blah. And if I click record, it is supposed to record. This is just a static page, just to get a look and feel. This is just to get the look and feel, not behavior. There is no behavior attached to it at this point. Today, we are not going to talk about any behavior. It is for tomorrow. All right. I hope you got what we just did. So we got this as the output. That's all. This is how you create any React components. But the interesting thing here is that if we make the entire application as just one single component, you don't require ReactJS for that. The power of ReactJS is that you can create smaller components, smaller reusable components, which you can combine them, which you can configure and combine them to create an overall application. So that tomorrow, if somebody else is also interested in, let's say, this piece or some part of this application, you can just give that small component to that fellow. Otherwise, they need to take your entire application, and that is not what we call as reusability. All right, so let us look at that. Let me see how we can divide this into one single component into smaller components. I want to have this piece, this heading, as one small component, because in our company, we call it as Koyya timesheets. If XYZ company wants to use our application, they want to have their company name over there, right? So that should be a separate component whose value can be configured, can be changed by somebody. Similarly, these are the guidelines that we follow in our organization. Not everybody may have should have these guidelines. They may have other different set of other guidelines. So we want to make it as a separate component so that if someone wants to use it, let them use it as it is. If they want to configure, let them configure. Similarly, I want to have this particular summary, like on which day, what time, from home or office. These all will be another component. And the activities that we have done, I want to make it another component. And the final effort computation, some other component. So I want to divide this into several components, not just one component. This entire thing is one single component, that is app. But I don't want to have everything in app only. I want to have smaller components that made up, that is what makes up, those are all things together make up the app component. So let me give some names. For the top one, let me call it as header. For the second one, let me call it as legend. For the third one, let me call it as summary. Fourth one, let me call it as activities. Fifth one, let me call it as effort. So how many components I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These 5 components will be part of the app component. Now let us create each of these components. Let me start with the header component. Okay, sorry. Once we create all these components, our app component looks this simple. Earlier, how the app component was looking, it was like this much of lot of 2 pages of code we have in the app component. But now, how much we are having? Just only this much. The div, the initial div, we need to return from return or from an app or any component, we need to return only one element with any number of child elements. So div I am using as one element. These are all my child elements. What are those child elements? A header. Look at this H, it is in caps. Means it is not a simple HTML tag. It is a React tag, React component tag, which will be defined or which is defined in separate file in this name. Similarly, after that, hi Krishna. Currently, I am leaving it as it is. Then I have, sorry, I think this I need to remove. In that place, I need to keep the legend. This is a typo. This is an error. I need to remove this, and in this place, we have this legend. Then we have summary, that those dates, times, and other things. Then we have these activities, the activities list. Then we have final effort computation. Then we have the button. Let us look at each of them. The header, right? This is header is a React component. Like any other React component, it is returning one single element. What is that element? It is just an empty element. You need not even give a name also for that. You can give, you may say div, or you can just leave it like this, not a problem. And what it contains? Just a H1 tag saying Koyya timesheet. That is what it is. That's all. For this box, the component is this simple, and you export it. Similarly, for legend, in the legend we have login time must be this, logout time must be this, blah blah blah. We have written, right? So you write all those things, whatever you have in this place, right? All I did is I just cut and pasted here. That's all. Nothing I have done. I'm just redistributing it into different smaller components. Again, the function name is legend, capital, returning one element with several sub-elements, and export. Similarly, summary, you have that input, date input, time input, from time, to time, from home or from office, summary is fine. Activities, those activities we have seen, right? Those drop-down boxes. And finally, effort, put X hours, 5 minutes, blah, blah, blah. That's it. Even after doing all these things, we'll be having the same outcome. We'll be having the same outcome. I'll show that in a while. But even now, once I put all this, yeah, same, I'm repeating again, just to see that you can see now that we have whatever we created header will sit here. Whatever we created as legend will sit here. Whatever we created as summary will sit here. Activity sits here. Effort is sitting here. App is one component. Header, legend, summary, activities, effort, these are all other components. Because this is containing the other components, we call this as nesting. We call this as nesting. So these are all nested components. Header is a nested component because it is nested within app. Right? So that means in ReactJS, you can create just one app, one component, or you can create several components and you compose them to create a nesting structure. A component may contain other component, a component may contain multiple number of components, and they may contain their own components. That way you can have any depth in that component hierarchy. Very simple, right? I haven't done much of rocket science so far. Whatever we have earlier, we split it into smaller components and we exported them from their own individual modules. That's all I have done. Now, you see here, even here also, this header is a read-only thing. Legend is also read-only thing. Legend is like those guidelines. And then we have summary, as user need to fill it in, activities, user need to fill it in, effort will be computed. So there is, I can see that these three together, also I can make it as a separate component. Let me call that as the timesheet component. Let me call that piece as the timesheet component. Let me remove all of them and just have one component called timesheet form. If I want to do that, all I need to do is like create something called timesheet form, push those summary, activities, effort, button, everything, that entire form into this place, and update these activities anyway you have, right? And update your original app with just only timesheet, just only this much. You can do that, right? That way, then what happened? App is a component which is nested header, which are nested legend, which nested timesheet form, and timesheet form itself nested summary, activities, effort. So you can have any kind of a depth like that. So these all come under something called component nesting. I'll show the outcome little later. Let me move on a little bit more. So we have these activities, right? How did we write those activities? The activities look something like this. The activities component was written like this: spent this much, and then one more, and then one more. How many of these things we write like this? Here I have written 3 lines, right? 3 activities. What if I want to write 30 activities? Do I really write like this? Then the code size becomes too huge. Instead, because it is the same similar component, we are repeating, or similar piece of code we are repeating multiple times. You can actually convert this into something called a list component. How does it look like? Let us see. First, I'll create another component called activity. What is this contains? One of them only, just one activity. This is the markup for each of the activities, right? So only that much I kept, removed everything else, and I call it as activity, which is again a separate component. Means each of the activity will contain what is the activity, how many hours or minutes you spent on that. That's it. Now we want to render multiple instances of this activity. Now let's go back to activities, and all I do is, under activities, I import this activity just one now we have written, and then what do? Within the return markup. So far we haven't written any code within the markup. Now I'm writing code within the markup. When I'm writing code within the markup, I need to enclose it within these curly braces, first point. Otherwise it will treat it as just normal text only. The moment you kept them in this pair of curly braces, it executes whatever you have written between those curly braces. This is all is EMEA 2015. That's where that ECMA 2015 comes. So what I'm doing here, I'm creating an array with up to 5 elements, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And for each of those elements, I'm running this, something called an arrow function. We call these things as arrow functions. These are like lambdas of Java or lambdas of Python. Both in Python and Java, we have lambda functions, right? Same thing. Here we call them as arrow functions. So at this map function, you know what a map does, right? You know map reduce algorithms. In a map function will pick up one item from this array, that is the item, at so and so index, and executes this. And executes this piece means between this open arrow and closing arrow, for 5 times it will print this activity component. And what each of the activity component contains? This piece, right? Whatever you are seeing here. And that means if you do it for 5 times, what is the final effect? You will get the same effect like this. That's what we wanted to achieve. So then what happened? You have activities. Earlier, it was like this much of code. Now you have only this much. If you want to have 10 activities or 50 activities, the only thing you need to change is here only. You will not write that activity, that particular tag for 100 times. You just only say it is 100. The system will take care of rendering them for you. It is like a kind of a for loop for you. right? Let me make last changes. With this, we'll actually close the session also. After we'll just go through this code now, and then we go to the actual application, see all those things for ourselves. So in the header, how that header was looking earlier, this was the header. I said this need not be same for every client. Different clients, different. Somebody is interested in our header component. They liked our header component. They want to reuse it. But when they want to reuse it, it is appearing as Koyya timesheet. They don't want that. They want to have XYZ timesheet or XYZ effort tracking system, XYZ attendance system, something they want to give. If you hard code like this, they cannot reuse our component. To make our components to be reusable, we need to configure them using the so-called properties. Using the so-called properties. For any component function, so far we are just only saying header and no, just an empty parenthesis we are giving. Instead, you can also pass some properties. It need not be named as props only. It can be XYZ also, but typically we call it as props. So just leave it as props so that you need not reinvent the wheel. Right? What these props contain? Any properties, any attributes that you may pass to this element when you are rendering. So let's say those properties contain one of the properties is title. Then whatever is the title will appear between this opening and closing tag of H1. Why? Because it is written within curly braces. Remember, we are writing it within the curly braces. Anything that you write within the curly braces, within the JSX markup will be executed. How it is executed? It checks for props that is there here, and in which it looks for a property called title. Property called title. Similarly, legend also. Legend is having some 4 conditions in our case. Should be logged in before 10, should be logged out after 4, something we have written. A different company may want to have their own rules. A different company may want to have their own rules. Not just only 4, they may want to have 40 rules or 1 rule only. If we want to make our legend component reusable, we need to make it configurable by accepting properties. So legend is also accepting properties now. Legend is also accepting properties now. And then we are saying fill in the timesheet by following these guidelines. Where are those guidelines? They are there here. So in the curly braces, what I'm doing, from the properties, I'm looking for a property called guidelines, which I'm expecting it as an array, because guidelines, right? We are expecting one too many number of guidelines. And for each of the guidelines, right, we'll take each of those guidelines, right? We'll take each of those guidelines into the map function. Means each of the item is one of the guidelines. And we just print that within a list item. Within the list item. That's simple. Right? Finally, how do we push all these things together? You see here, somebody, let's say somebody is writing their own application. What they need to do, or even ourselves, what we do, we set up what is a title as a normal constant. We write what are those guidelines as an array of 4 strings, let's say. And then in our app, when we are building, when we are constructing, I am saying header is expecting a property called title, right? So you pass the title here. What is the title? Whatever you have created over there. See, it is in the curly braces. Remember, if it is in curly braces, it is like normal JavaScript code. It is looking for a variable called title, and it is there here. And legend, there is something called legend. Where is that legend? Legend is expecting properties. In properties, it is expecting something called guidelines. So you pass those guidelines. Where are those guidelines? They are created here. The same name. Name can be anything, but we have given the same name. That is legend. After that, what we have? Timesheet form. Timesheet form is containing what? All these summary, activities, efforts, all these things. And what activities is containing? Activities is containing an array of several activity elements. Lot of components we got, right? When we put all these things together, we'll be getting finally this application. Let me take to this application. So this is the activity component that which I just have shown it to you. This is activities component. This is the header component. This is the legend component. This is the timesheet form component, and this is the summary component, and finally, this is the app component. This is the app component. I have written those in the slide. I have written, sorry, in this slide, I have written this data within the app component. If I want to make app itself reusable, what I can do, little more I have done here. The app itself is accepting properties, title and guidelines from outside of the app. So how I can pass the attributes to the app? I go to index.js, where we have created that root element and rendering, right? Earlier I was doing that. Now I have created all of them are here, those constants. And for the app, I am passing two properties. Title is this, guidelines is this. So title is one property, guidelines is another property. When we go to this app, we take those properties. We are taking those properties and title property and guidelines property. We are passing title to the header and guidelines to the legend. Then header is receiving that property called title and using it here. And legend is receiving those properties here and rendering them or using them or here, the property guidelines property. That's it. That's all our entire complete application. Let me just run it once. This, whatever I'm running, let me stop this. I am into this project, right? npm start. Right, I got the same application running. Right. If you want me to change, let's say if somebody bought our application, they are creating their own application. This is their application. Instead of Koyya timesheet, they want to say Kumar timesheets. In one place I have changed. I did not change anything in the header. The other components, whatever components were there, I did not make any changes. I'm changing it to my index.js only. But still, you can see that it changed. Let's say I want to add one more guideline. Lunch break must be between 1 and 2 p.m. only. Let's say somebody put that as a condition. This is one more guideline. This is all array only, array of strings. This is one string, second string, third string, fourth string, fifth string, comma separated strings. I just added one more string here. Where I'm doing all these things in my application, my index.js application, not in those app component or header component or legend component. I'm just making the changes in my configuration file, that is index.js file, but you can see that is already created here. It is already available here. Why? Because these guidelines are passed to app as guidelines. And what app is doing, it is passing those guidelines, whatever it received, to the legend. And what legend is doing, it is receiving all those guidelines here. For each of the item in those guidelines, it is creating an li element and writing that item whatever it is. So if it is lunch break item, it writes that lunch break item. It is that simple. It is that simple. So that's it. This is what I have done so far. This is the first day application. Completely static, no behavior, right? Behavior means you do any changes here, nothing is actually what you call behaving. I say something here, I say something more. Let's say I'm changing it to something else. Currently, I cannot even change also. I say record, nothing is happening. The dynamism is what we call as state management. That part we'll see tomorrow. State management part we'll see tomorrow, how to make this application to do something. As of now, we only took care of how it should be displayed, how we want to show this application onto the screen. Right? So that's it. So we have seen the agenda. What was the agenda? The agenda was to look at just one. All right. Introduction, environment setup. We have seen how to bootstrap the project using Create React app. We have seen project structure. We did a code walkthrough. We now know how to create a component, how to compose components one within other nested components. We now know how to create a list components using that map function. And we know how to pass the properties and how to receive and use the properties. So we have covered the complete agenda that is meant for today. All right. So let us look at the summary once, and then we close the session. So ReactJS is a UI library for web interfaces. It is developed at Facebook and later released for development community. That's why we are able to use it. It follows component architecture. Now I hope you are much more good at understanding what is component, right? Component is a self-sufficient unit of UI so that you can reuse, you can compose it in other components and it becomes a different thing. It is based on ECMA 2015. You can see that JavaScript code I'm writing is ECMA 2015 code, ES6 code. Visual Studio Code is the most popular IDE. You have seen that I am using it. Node.js is used while development. You see that npm, npx, for any of them to run, we need to have Node.js. That is what is happening. So npm offers a way for managing the packages that we have seen, various other tools for building and obfuscating the code. You can see that, right? Whenever I'm changing the code, immediately I'm seeing the results. That is all because of that Node.js environment. ReactJS components are simple functions. I hope you understand that point. Whenever I'm writing a new component, all I am doing is I'm just writing a function, nothing else. ReactJS component names must be capitalized. They must start with capital letter. That is important. Component functions must return only one element. They must return only one element. If they return more than one element, it fails. For example, let me do a small experiment here. Here I have only one element. One element means one element with any number of child elements. That is fine. But let's say other than just one element, let me write one more element here. Let me say here some p tag. Save it. Immediately you got an error. It is saying that adjacent JSX element must be wrapped in another element. Blah blah blah. It is saying that you have two elements. You keep both these elements in some other element. Do not send two elements. That's what it is saying. Right. So the point here is that the components must return only one element. And JSX supports mixing JavaScript and HTML. We have seen it, right? HTML you are writing using tags, and normal JavaScript you are writing within the curly braces. That is possible because these are all JSX things. Components can be nested. You have seen that. Listing components is better achieved by the map function. Right? When you want to list several components together, then you'll be having such kind of a map function. For example, in the RSP application, you want to list all the services. You definitely need to use map function. Similarly, in the CashewNet ERP application, Sumant is supposed to list several graphs. Again, map function. Similarly, Vinesh is developing that feedback application. You need to put a lot of feedback a questionnaire you need to put, right? Options for questionnaire and etc. Again, you'll be listing those questions and the answers. You'll be using map function. Very, very important thing. And components can be configured via properties. We have seen it, right? We can configure our header component to display whatever title you want to display. We configured legend component to display any number of guidelines. That is all configuration. We did it using properties. Remember, these properties are immutable. The components which receive these properties cannot change them. They can only use them. Right? For example, here, if I, let's say there is a header component. This is the property. So I want to say, I want to do something like once I receive those properties, props, title is there, right? Props title equal to something else. I want to write like this, right? When I write like this, still nothing would happen. Nothing would change here. You see, you are assigning a read-only property that is title with something else. This title is where is it? The title is a property. You cannot change it. It is only read-only. It's just only read-only. You immediately are seeing something failed here. Right? So you cannot change them. These are all immutable. So let me remove this piece of code. Sorry. Yeah. I removed it and now everything is again back to normal. Everything is again back to normal. So that is essentially that point. Properties are immutable. Properties, you propagate it from parent to child. You are propagating the properties from parent to child. So to just to show that point once, sorry, here only, let me go back to that thing here. This entire thing is app, which is having children like header, legend, summary, activities, and effort. Later, we had timesheet, which is having the summary, activities, and effort. How am I passing these properties? I could only pass the properties from parent to child. Let's see. All right. So here, from app, I am passing properties to header. From app, I am passing properties to legend. Legend cannot pass properties to app. That is that last point. That is that last point. Properties propagate only from parent to child, not from child to parent. These are the concepts that we have seen today, right? So questions, let me go, we are done. Basically, these are the references. You can refer to them if you are very new to JavaScript. Go through that. W3C Schools is one of the easy to use portal to learn any technology quickly. So look at W3 Schools for JavaScript. If you are new to ECMA 2015, you know JavaScript but not ES6, then go to that second link. To learn more about ReactJS, you have some tutorials in their website. Go to that website, and to understand the actual API, like what is that React DOM is all about, to understand those things, you can go to that API documentation. These are the links. All right. So that's it. I think we are done for the day.